it was really, really important for me to talk about those struggles because I think we need to destigmatize mental health issues. And I wanted other people to know just how bad that it got for me and that I survived it. And I'm thriving now through it because I wanted them to know that they could too.
Tiny dancer, your mama wanted you to sing. You had to answer for all the dreams she had you dream. You wouldn't tell her that those dreams were not your own. You lived them for her till you flew away from home. And there are so many words left unspoken. It's hard to heal the heart when it's been broken. When there are secrets that you keep and there are lies you learn to tell, it breaks your heart. My mother's daughter, I learned to hide the truths I know. Like open water, you're never sure how deep I go. You didn't tell me the things you needed me to see. A trail of breadcrumbs from a bird who wouldn't sing. And there are so many words left unspoken. It's hard to heal the heart when it's been broken. When there are secrets that you keep and there are lies you learn to tell. Was the truth that much harder than the lie? A captive bird can never learn to to heal my heart once it's been broken. When there are secrets that you keep and there are lies you learn to tell, it breaks your heart.
Welcome to DNA Clarity and Support. I'm your host, Brian. Listen as I chat with authors and leaders in the DNA world about the family and personal impacts of DNA testing. You'll hear news stories, unique perspectives, find out about books, websites, organizations, other podcasts for those involved in the world of DNA. Please be sensitive to younger listeners as the conversations can get intense at times. This is a production of Watershed DNA. Learn more at watersheddna.com. Welcome today to Cory Goodrich and Elizabeth Lyons. I'm so excited to have the two of you together for this episode of DNA Clarity and Support. You're the first time, besides Dani Shapiro and her husband, I was able to get the two of them together in a discussion as well. And I think it makes such a difference to the discussion when there's, multiple people talking about kind of how things came together. So Cory, tell me a little bit about your memoir, Folk Song, and where Elizabeth comes into the story for you.
Well, it's such an insane story. If it didn't happen, I would not believe that it was real at all. But I had been working on this for about 3 years after my mother had died, and the pandemic hits. And I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do with this? I thought at the time it might be a one-woman show. It might be some music. I wasn't sure exactly what this was going to turn into. I really just started writing so that I could remember the events as they happened, because I knew that I was going to forget things. I say this, that, if we remembered the pain of childbirth, we would never have a second child. So our mind kind of comes in to protect us, right? Well, I kind of knew that was going to happen with this experience, with my mother's death and the subsequent revelations. And so I just started journaling and putting these pieces together. And when the pandemic hit, here I'm stuck with no theater. I'm an actress, so the theaters are all closed, and I have nothing but time sitting out on my porch thinking, well, I should do something with this, but I don't know what to do. And Elizabeth and I have a mutual friend. Her name is Barry. And Barry had said to me a couple of times, she said, you have to talk to my friend Elizabeth. She is this wonderful editor and book launcher, and she's just great. Talk to her. And I thought, no, not ready. Not going to do it. Did it a second time. No, I'm not ready. Thanks, Barry. Appreciate it. Keep on. Third time, she says this, you have to talk to Elizabeth. I'm like, okay. The next day, she says, Elizabeth just put out an Instagram post saying that she has an opening for an editor. Talk to her. Finally, just to get Barry off my back, because she just is relentless. I
really wanted you to connect with Elizabeth, sounds like.
I don't know what her obsession was, but I was like, I could talk to somebody about this anyway. And Liz, I would let you take it from here. Do you want to pick up the story there?
So Barry reached out to me too. And, Barry's becoming somewhat infamous through this whole story, which I don't think she anticipated at all. But my story of knowing Barry is funny as well. I won't go that far back in the history, but Barry and I both have a set of twins. So that's how I know Barry. So the coincidences kind of just keep coming, right? But Barry reached out to me and she said, I have reached out to Cory and I have told her yet again, this is the third time, that she has to reach out to you. This is a sign. I'm sure of it. And I don't know if she will or not, but, she has to. So Cory did, maybe the next day or so. And she kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm getting to the point where I'm telling myself a story that it's so real to me that I hope it's actually the full truth, because this is how I just continue to tell the story. Cory said, basically, Barry's on my back. Let's just chat. It was kind of like, you were so kind. But it was like, let's just connect so that we can kind of check this box for Barry. And I said, cool. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have about the publishing process, about writing a book, about whatever. Like, let me be a resource. And you had an appointment with another editor for like a few days later. And so I said, I'm not looking to get into the way of any of that. Keep doing what you're doing. So we chatted. We got along great, because it's impossible not to get along great with Cory Goodrich.
Ditto with you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And we'll just skip forward. By the end of the conversation, we had sort of agreed that Cory was going to send me 10 pages of the book, and I was just going to do a sample edit just to kind of for grins. And she was going to keep her appointment with the editor that she had an appointment with. And we were just going to touch base again in a week or so. And she was going to get info from this other editor. And then if she had questions, we were going to talk through it. Was completely unbiased, doing my best. But I'll be honest with you, once I got my eyes on this manuscript, my unbiasedness, I'm making up that word, started to dissipate. Because I was like,
but how could you tell that Cory's story was going to be one that the readership needed that book?
The story is remarkable. right? I don't understand the story from a place of having lived it. I cannot relate on that level. It didn't touch me on that level. What touched me was Cory said, brace yourself, Elizabeth, because I'm not a writer. And that is the biggest lie she's ever told. I mean, so far. She's a brilliant writer. She is an artist and a creative through and through. And so for me, one of the things that I do for people's manuscripts that I love doing is people who literally are not writers and they have a beautiful, brilliant story, but they don't know how to put it into words in a way that will compel someone. That's where I step in, because I love to sort of put the music on top of the scene. If we go to Cory's acting, background, right? I love to put the music that brings the audience in metaphorically. Cory didn't need that. Cory had already done it. So I'm reading this and I'm already brought in. And that I just thought, this is just like nothing I've ever set my eyes on. Truly, it was the biggest gift ever. And then, of course, comes the big whammy, which
let me take on here and I'll toss it back to you. So I'm here waiting for her response. And I get a voicemail from her because she couldn't even type it. She's like, oh my God. She sent a voicemail saying, I went to your website. And she said, I am from Wilmington, Delaware too. And so we were sort of bouncing back and forth with this conversation. I said, oh, that's so weird. I was born in Wilmington and nobody's born in Delaware. It's like us and Joe Biden. That's it. And mushroom farms and chicken farms. So that alone was hilarious, a hilarious coincidence. But then she said, yeah. So my father worked at DuPont, the company her father worked at. And I said, wow, well, my father worked at Hercules, which is a sister company, but my biological father worked at DuPont as well. And Elizabeth says, yeah, my father's a chemical engineer. And I say, my biological father is a chemical engineer. Is he my daddy? And she says, hang on. You tell it from here. I'm going to call my dad right now.
There for a minute that we were going to find out something about the two of you.
Right. It was wait. Oh my God, this is, and we're still convinced, Cory and I, that there are people in our past we're going to find things out going forward. Like, you know him, or you dated him, or what?
I'm certain she dated my brother. I'm positive.
So I said, hang on a second. Let me call my dad. So I called my dad. Dad, did you know a man named Don Garnett? My dad says, oh my God, yeah, brilliant PhD chemist, chemical engineer. I worked with him at Chambers Works. I worked with him when we lived in Buffalo for 2 years. And as it turned out, Don had worked in Buffalo on and off those same exact 2 years. So my dad not only knew him, but had worked with him. Had incredibly kind things to say about him, because Cory, you can speak to this later, but maybe that's what you're kind of always hoping, is that the person was a good person, right? And this was the only, beyond your other siblings that you've now connected with, this was like the one person who could connect the dots.
It's insane because my mother was older. I was the last baby, so my parents were all older. But so everybody's gone. All of her friends are gone. Their friends are gone. I can't get the story told to me by anybody. And here is her father who knew and worked with them. And I said right there, yeah, we're working together. So I could not ignore that as a sign. It was crazy, just crazy.
Crazy. Just the odds of all of that all coming together at the right time too.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my wedding, my rehearsal dinner at Hercules Country Club. So my mom just finished reading the book, and the book is describing locations in Delaware. And my mom is like, it's right down the street.
Shopped at the same grocery store. We shopped at Pathmark. I mean, it's crazy in this big world. I'm in Chicago. She's in Arizona, and we're talking about Wilmington, Delaware, of all places.
Crazy.
So. Of all places. Well, Cory, music and acting are in your DNA. That I learned about you from reading your book. And I know that you have a new album coming out around the time of our conversation. And what's the connection between your music and this particular memoir? Because, writing is a form of creation too. It's all, different forms of expressing yourself. So tell me how those are connected for you.
So, as I said, this was potentially a one-woman show. I wasn't quite sure. I pour myself out in song lyrics. I'm a singer-songwriter. And after I found out about my father, I couldn't write anything. So I was really, really, really stuck. When I eventually put together the book, Folk Song, I referenced a lot of old folk songs and some of the lyrics of songs that I had written. There was a particular song that I wrote 6 years ago, years before I had found out about my father. And this song is called Will I Find You? And it's the story of me as a little girl, which is a true story, looking out the window up at the stars and wondering, where are you? This person, thinking it was a soulmate or something. I don't know, but what it was. And I wrote this song 6 years ago called Will I Find You? And as I was going through the writing of the book, I remembered that song. I went, I wrote that for my father. I didn't know that that's who I was looking for, but that's who it was. And so I pulled that song out. And there was also a song that kept going through my head as I was going to the hospital to sit with my mother during her surgery. And it was Lonesome Valley. It's an old folk song. Carter family has done it. Joan Baez, everybody has sung the song. And so this song just kept playing and playing through my head during the whole experience. And so when I started writing the book, I used that as a centerpiece because it talks about your mother. As my mother lay dying, you have to walk that lonesome valley by yourself. So that is threaded throughout the book. And of course, the natural progression, I thought, would be to make the music that is actually in the book. And then I also added some of the songs that I wrote about my NPE experience, songs about my mother, about my father, about what it feels like. I have a song that I'm in love with. I'm so happy with it. I just wrote a couple of weeks ago called Down Low Lullaby, which is about saying, I won't be your secret anymore. So the album is kind of morphing into not only just the songs that are contained in the book, but also some other things that I've written. So it is thematic to the NPE experience, and it's my expression of love and joy and sadness. And I think of it as a companion piece to the book. And I'm really, really excited about it. I'm working with Ethan Deppy from The Quiet Regret, who is amazing, just amazing. So
it sounds great. As when I got to the end of your book, I kind of looked back at it and I thought about it in really two separate sections. So the first half of the book, we learn about your journey through the end of your mother's life and losing your mother. And then the second half of the book, and I don't want to spoil too much of the story, but that's when you share about your discovery that the dad you always knew was not your biological father. And then there was somebody else who was. And the way that you found out about that is different than some other MPEs. So when I look back at your book, it's two separate stories, but it's really two in one because it's all about your identity and piecing that back together in the part of life where your mother is gone. She's no longer in your life and you're finding these answers. So it's almost like you were grieving two losses at the same time. What was that like? One of those things by themselves would be really hard. How did you make it through two losses, really two big losses at once?
Kind of three, actually. I lost my mother. I lost my father, as I knew him. And I lost my identity all at the same time. It was important for me to do both sections of this book. I didn't just want to talk about the NPE journey. I wanted to talk about my mother because my mother and her secrets and the sort of hidden life that she had, and my constantly replaying all these little pieces and little snippets of things from the past, from the future. It was really important to the whole piece. I am not shy about this in the book. It was crippling. And I talk in the book a lot about mental health and suicidal ideation and worrying about my sanity and therapy and possibly medicating. And I thought I was kind of going crazy a little bit. But I think it is so important to talk about this to people who are making this discovery because all of this is normal. There are so many varied responses to this discovery. There are some people who it doesn't affect hardly at all, who don't have the drive to know that they're birth fathers. And that's fine. That's normal. There are other people who completely lose their sense of self. And that's normal too. It was really, really important for me to talk about those struggles because I think we need to destigmatize mental health issues. And I wanted other people to know just how bad that it got for me and that I survived it and I'm thriving now through it because I wanted them to know that they could too. So I can't, if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't have liked to have lost my mother at the same time. That was a bit much, but it was all relevant to my story and to how it all played out. So,
Thank you for saying that. I do think that breaking the stigma around mental health and talking about it openly and talking about struggles and how you personally got through it can be the light at the end of the tunnel that somebody else needs.
right.
And so you never know who's listening. You never know how many lives can be affected just by telling your own story. So it takes a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to do that. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. And I am shocked by how many people, how many of my friends, how many strangers have reached out to me to say, hey, I'm going through this too. And in all, not just about NPE, but about mental health and about relationship things. And I am so grateful that I can use my struggle to help somebody else.
While we're on this topic of mental health, there's actually a group of therapists and counselors that have come together to form a coalition of NPE specialized therapy. I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes, but it's npecounseling.org. Also, mpecounseling.org goes to the same website. MPE and NPE are acronyms that pretty much mean the same thing, either misattributed parentage experience or a non-paternity event or not parent expected. And that has just come about in the past year or so. And there's some trainings that are available now for mental health experts to become specialized in understanding the experience of the NPE discovery, because there are some, commonalities from one person to the next about what they experience from making that shocking discovery that one or both of their parents isn't who they always thought. But it's different from person to person, like you mentioned, and there are different ways to work through that shock that's going to be a little bit different for one person to the next. It sounds like for you, Cory, it's being creative. Creative expression is healing for you. And so you've taken that and taken it in so many different directions. I would still love to see a one-woman stage act.
Thank you. I'm sure it will happen. I mean, part of this journey for me that is fascinating is that I am an actress, I am a singer, but I was never an artist. And when I made the discovery that my biological father was an artist and he was a painter and he believed that everybody could paint, as I was going through this trauma, I thought, well, maybe that's a way, since I couldn't write songs at the time and couldn't use that kind of therapy. I thought, well, maybe I'll try art therapy. Maybe I'll start painting some things. And I started sketching what depression looked like to me. And that kind of resonated. And I thought, well, maybe I'll paint. If he could paint, maybe I can paint too. And this is one of the biggest shocks to me about this whole thing is the second I picked up that paintbrush, I knew what to do. I don't know how. I didn't watch any YouTube tutorials or anything. I just knew. And whether it is channeling my father, which I say that sometimes I feel like he is painting through me. I don't know if I'm going to be that hippy dippy about it. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Or if it's genetic memory or whatever. But now my side hustle is totally painting, and I'm teaching painting right now. I'm teaching a painting class, and it blows my mind. So how much of this is through my DNA, is through my genetics, through him. So
how much of it is in your DNA and how much of it is your reaction to being open to what the universe has for you?
Right.
Hard to know. So from reading all of Folk Song, I will say that it's really clear that you have a lot of love for your mother. And even after making the discovery and finding out that she had kept the secret from you, and not just her, but there were others in the family who also knew the identity of your biological father. But even when all of that came to light and you expressed that you had felt anger towards her and everything, but through it all, you still love her. I think a lot of mothers out there are scared to tell their children the truth, whether that child is still young or they're an adult. They're scared to bring up that topic, do you think they should be?
Boy, that's a hard question. It's a great question. I think one of the benefits for me is that I am an actress. So it is my job to put myself in other people's shoes. So I have been training for this experience unintentionally my whole life. I think it's funny that I constantly would get roles where I was in a love triangle before I knew. And so I have done Francesca in Bridges in Madison County and Guinevere in Camelot. So I've constantly been in the situation where I've researched what these feelings are and how this is. So I think I have a unique perspective on my mother's situation. I know that there are a lot of people who are very angry at their mothers, and this is a very, very difficult situation. And as we know, there are many different variations of the story. But I keep thinking of my mom and what else could she have done? In the 60s, in the late 60s, when divorce was a new thing, people were getting divorces, but there's still a lot of stigma around affairs and relationships. What else could she have done? I keep putting myself in her shoes. And that's what I kept doing throughout the book, because then I could understand. I can understand the situation that she was in. I can understand her need to protect me and my father's need to protect me and my biological father's need to protect me. I think when I think back why she didn't tell me herself, I think she was afraid. I think she was afraid that I'm going to get really emotional here. I'm super weepy today. I think she was afraid that I wasn't going to love her anymore. And one of my greatest regrets is that she died with that fear. Because had she told me beforehand, yes, would I have been angry? Probably. I mean, this is the story of mothers and daughters throughout eternity. You know, we're always yelling at each other. But I would never have stopped loving her. And it does break my heart that fear, she lived with that her entire life. For mothers who are in this situation, I have complete empathy for you and respect, but would also like to say that the truth, it is so important to give a child their truth. It's hard sometimes, and the decisions that you have to make as a woman, as a mother, as a parent, whatever, are not always easy. But we can always deal with the truth better than we can with a lie. If we have all the information, we can make hard choices. But if we're being told falsehoods, then we're basing our entire life on something that isn't true. So will your child be angry at you if you tell them? Possibly. But you will also give them the gift of knowing themselves. I am so grateful for who I am today because of this. I told you I get weepy. Being able to be my authentic self, knowing where I come from, knowing my father's history, knowing my mother's history, and being open to the gifts that I've gotten from this discovery. I'm incredibly grateful. So yeah, it may be hard, but sometimes to quote Glennon Doyle, we can do hard things, you know?
We can.
Yeah.
I noticed that through your writing, you chose to use the word untruth instead of lie. And I wondered if you could share with us the difference between those two, what the distinction is. I feel like that was an intentional choice on your part.
It definitely was. I was uncomfortable with saying that people lied, because lie to me feels like deception and purposeful deception. Everything that was done for me, I think, was to protect me. The decisions may have been wrong in the long run, but it was out of love. They weren't lying to me. They weren't saying, if my mother had been lying when I said, oh, my daughter looks just like daddy, because she's blonde haired and blue eyed, and Tom was blonde haired and blue eyed. If she was lying, my mother would have said, oh, yes, she does. Yeah, I remember when you were conceived. That would have been a lie. That would have been intentional. Instead, she just snorted and said, no, so she didn't tell me the truth, but she didn't lie about it either. I think she must have been shocked that I didn't figure it out. All the clues were there, and I just did not put it together, didn't want to or whatever. But I do believe that she was trying to protect me. She wasn't consciously lying in a mean way. My family wasn't lying to me. They were omitting because they were protecting me.
So it came from a place of protection and So it's made it a little bit easier for you to accept it when it came out, because it wasn't like they were intentionally trying to
Right.
pull a fast one on you or
They
something.
weren't trying to hurt me. They were trying to protect me. So untruth seems a little easier than lying.
And it sounds like it felt right for you, that was just a more accurate description of.
Yes, there are certainly times that I called it lying. And there were certainly times when I was angry at everybody and did kind of blame them. But I mean, through it all, I have been able to see that it was out of great love. This is a hard situation for them. I mean, to risk telling me the truth could have blown everything up. And I feel a great deal of empathy for everybody that was involved in the stories, for my brothers and my sister. And it's a hard thing, but I do believe we all do the best we can with what we're given. So
I agree. And relationships change over time too, throughout the course of our lives, even with siblings. And you talked a little bit about your relationship with your stepfather, Jim. Mm-hmm. And he also struggled with the discovery of your paternity after your mother's death. And he invited you to fly out and visit with him. And you describe in the book how that visit went. Did he ever share about what made that your discovery a struggle for him? Was it related to your mother and how people might view her after learning?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about her reputation. He didn't want her reputation to be sullied. He asked me, I feel kind of bad about saying this. He begged me, he's like, please don't tell anybody the story. But my response was to tell everybody. I told seatmates on the plane. I told checkout clerks. I just told random strangers because I had been silenced for so long that my response was actually to tell everyone, to tell the truth. But I know that Jim was very concerned with, what would her friends think? What would the judgment be on her, not only for having a relationship outside of the marriage, but for keeping the secret. And I think part of the reason that I want to tell the story is there is so much shame and stigma surrounding sex and affairs. And we do have this puritanical view of relationships, and we are seeing her through that lens, right? I am the child of an affair. So it is very difficult for me at this point to say, I'm not saying everybody go have affairs or anything like that, but, to say that that was a bad thing sort of delegitimizes me, I know that Jim wanted to protect her. I know that he would have taken her secret to the grave. He knew about it since before they were married. So he'd known about my real father from the very beginning, but he loves her and he still loves her and wants to protect her. And I can understand that. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to protect me too. Again, it's the same thing. He said, your mother wanted you to be a Goodrich, not a Garnett. That's why she kept this all up.
How much of that birth order do you think came into play as well? That you were the baby of the family by quite a number of years. Right. And has that followed you throughout your life, that the baby of the family, even as an adult, is still the baby of the family?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, so my husband and I have gone through a lot of things after this discovery, and one of the things that I've said to him recently is, do not treat me like I'm precious. I can't stand that. And this is totally a result of being the baby, right? And also being an NP. So everyone tries to protect me. I am super emotional. As you can see, as I'm talking with my hands, and I feel a lot. And nobody in my family is very chill. They're very reserved. So I've always felt, why am I so different from my siblings who are just so cool and reserved and, big clue, ding, ding, ding. My biological father was also very passionate and very articulate. But because I have these big emotions and everybody's trying to just tamp it down because I'm the baby, it drives me crazy when they treat me like I'm precious. So a good therapy tip for husbands: don't treat your wife like she's precious.
Don't treat her like she's precious.
Deal with the feelings. It's okay to have big feelings.
It is okay to have big feelings, and it's okay to talk about them, and they change, and it's okay to talk about that too. Mm-hmm. So who has surprised you the most in your life since your discovery? Have people been there for you that you just didn't expect them to? And I guess on the flip side, were there expectations that you had for some people that they weren't able to kind of step up in that way for you?
I think it is hard for my existing siblings because they are dealing with the trauma of the relationship, which eventually caused my parents to get divorced anyway. So I think dealing with that has been difficult for them. Dealing with my need to explore my Garnett side. From their point of view, I am Goodrich through and through. And that's a beautiful thing. And I am so grateful for that. But they don't have that understanding of why I need to discover who my father was. And the biggest surprise to me, of course, was my brother, Lee, who is technically my half brother, but he is Don's son, younger than me by 10 years. He has become my best friend, soulmate, confidant, just everything. He was so imperative to me in the beginning of this discovery because he normalized everything. When I said to him, Lee, your father had an affair. Your father and my mother had an affair. I hope this doesn't change how you feel about him. He said, are you kidding? I think it would be wonderful to be a child of an affair. That's the most beautiful form of love, And it was such a strange thing to say at the time because I thought, what the heck, but he normalized me. He accepted me. He opened his arms and said, this is wonderful. He does that with everything. With every change that I make, he is always there for me saying, come here, you're a Garnett just like me. And that has been the greatest gift to me through this. He is my best friend. We went to Thailand, we went to Italy and Spain, and we're going to go to France, I think, when this is all over. And we're kind of reliving the childhood that we were denied. We fight now, and we tease each other and we behave like siblings because we're trying to rebuild this past we didn't have, which is beautiful.
That is. And I know some people find out from a DNA test first that they're matching to a different family, and then later they find out the story from other people. And in your situation, you found out from your siblings that you were raised with, and then later the DNA test came to prove it. Have you thought about what it might have been like if the opposite had happened? Mm-hmm. If the news about your father being Don Garnett had come from a DNA test instead of from a sibling?
Well, technically, I did take a DNA test first, but I didn't put it together. I sat with my ancestry DNA results with my mother. This was in the week before her surgery, with my mother and Dale, pulled up the thing and said, look at all these people. These are all my cousins. These are all related by DNA, but I don't know who the heck they are. And the two of them looked at the screen and must have been just panicking, but I didn't put it together. So all the stuff was right there and I didn't put it together. I am very grateful that it was Dale and Susie who eventually confirmed everything because I had a human person to talk to and they could tell me, well, his name was Don Garnett and they could give me this information. Sometimes when you just get your results from a computer screen, people are searching for years and years. Sometimes they never find their biological families. They don't have the clues. So I feel very profoundly grateful that I could ask some questions and that in turn then led me down the path. And it was a more compassionate way to find out, I think. I am very grateful to them. I hope they know that, I know this has been so difficult for the two of them, especially. But I'm glad they were there. Even if I do give them a hard time still.
I think that's a part of sibling relationships all life long, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how did you and Lee connect? It wasn't through the DNA test. You identified him.
So I Googled my father's name in Delaware, DuPont, and his obituary came up. But there was no way for me to confirm that was actually him. I suspected the second I saw his picture, of course, that was my father. But I didn't want to reach out right away to his wife. The obituary had the name of his wife and his son. And I didn't want to reach out because I didn't want to confirm anything. I didn't know if they knew that there was this secret love child, and I didn't want to destroy their image of Don. So I waited a whole week before I couldn't take it any longer. And then I wrote to the funeral home. The funeral home then sent my information on to Don's wife. And then she sent it to Lee and said, can you check out who this person is? And he emailed me back. And I said, hey, I found some things in my mother's memories. And is this man, I had a picture of me and Don. And I said, is this your father? But I cut out the baby part of me because I didn't want him to realize that I was, asking about this potential paternal event. So he took one look at the picture. He Googled me. He saw my name, saw my headshot. And he said, oh my God, I have a sister. He knew instantly the second he saw me. But we called and we both were playing it cool. And we eventually did a DNA test to confirm that we were half siblings. And that one came back with, I never remember this number, but it's 99% certainty that we were siblings. So that is how we started connecting. And then he flew out to Chicago a couple months later to meet me for the first time. And on an impulse, completely crazy, I said, let's go to Denver. Let's go visit our father's grave. So the two of us went to Denver, 36 hours after meeting each other for the first time, went to Denver and visited Don's grave together, which was insane. But it was also like the most amazing experience because we were on the plane together and, he reached out to hold my hand and I could feel our pulses just sort of synchronizing. And it was the first moment that I thought, oh my God, you are my brother and you are related to me. And we've just had this beautiful relationship ever since.
Traveling is a great way to get to know somebody in a very fast period of time, right?
Really quickly.
You're in a stressful environment, out of your comfort zone, and it's not always comfortable to be traveling together. So, maybe things would have panned out very differently if you both hadn't been open to just jumping on the plane and going to Colorado and visiting your father's grave.
We are, like I said, my other family is very reserved and plans everything out. And I'm sort of the anomaly because I just kind of jump. And Lee is the exact same way. So, we see so much of ourselves in each other. So, yes, I'm grateful.
And I've learned there's a term for that. It's called mirroring.
Ah.
And mirroring is when you see yourself reflected in another person. And it has been described in the adoption literature when adoptees reunite with their biological family, oftentimes when they're adults, and they can immediately see themselves in another face, sometimes the first time in their entire lives that they've seen another face that they can almost mirror.
Yeah. Have you seen my painting? I sent this to you, but I'm going to reach over here. So this is one that I did this painting, and a lot of NPEs seem to gravitate towards this and resonate with it. It was something that I painted. You see, she has no face, and it's called Ghost Girl. But this was me looking in the mirror and not seeing who I was anymore. That was sort of my artistic response to it. And I think that's exactly it. So here's the girl with no face to suddenly seeing her father and her brother, and that sort of filled in that reflection for me.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, it's the experiences of adoptees and people who are donor conceived and people who discover that they're an NPE. There's a lot of similarity that goes back to the absence of genetic family members and being able to see yourself in the faces of other people from a young age when your identity is forming. And so some people are going through that experience later in life as an adult when it's the first time that they're having that connection with people who share DNA with them. That's always been a part of, adoptions have been around for eons. But until recently, there was no way for people who were separated from genetic family to find each other again, except for DNA testing.
Right. And if you know that you are adopted and you have these holes, you at least know that it exists someplace. When you make this discovery and find out you're not who you thought you were, then everything sort of clicks in place. Lee often says, he's like, you are more like Pop than any of us, because there are two other siblings too. He said, you are the most like him. And I didn't grow up with him. So I find that absolutely fascinating.
The power of DNA, how much is in the DNA, right? So Cory, you described that Elizabeth, your editor for Folk Song, was, and this, I'm quoting your wording, you said she was yet another weird synchronistic sign from my father. And I asked Elizabeth to join us today because I wanted to hear more about that, we talked about that a little bit at the beginning of the podcast. Could you rephrase it also? What from the connection felt most like your father having a pull and you guys finding each other?
So there were many signs from my parents. I do not believe in signs. I am pragmatic. I don't want to believe that when I find a penny in the street that it is a sign from my mother. I don't believe that, And yet these things kept happening. I have a story in the book about a LinkedIn request from Don that came while he was still alive, obviously, but before I knew who he was, that I found after his death. So that was just a weird coincidence that happened. The fact that I met Elizabeth and that her father worked with Don, you could not put this in a movie and have anybody think that it was real. It would sound too contrived. Exactly.
It wasn't contrived. It was just
exactly what happened. And I do believe that Elizabeth and I were meant to work together because of this. And I'm sure that my father is working some mojo up in the afterlife.
So Elizabeth, what has been the most fun part, I guess, of working with Cory through this project?
What's interesting is that it's almost like a triangular thing because Cory and I are so similar. Like, I just adore this woman. Her creative side is so inspiring to me. I love that she's got this. So we've got a book, but as she mentioned, she's also a singer-songwriter and a painter, and all of it comes together. That's not always the case. Many times you have someone who's an author over here, and then they're a singer. So, the example I use is perhaps they write contemporary romance, but they sing like punk rock or something. Like, it doesn't go together, right? They're still an artist in both spaces, but their audience is different. And so in this case with Cory, her audience is exactly the same. If you like her writing, you're going to love her songwriting. If you love her songwriting, you're going to love her painting. If you love her painting, you're going to love her writing. Like, it's cyclical and it's circular. And I just adore her. Her expectations are spot on. Her patience is like, we're both patient, but impatient. We have fun working together. I have fun working with her. And I've never before wanted to open up my publishing company, Finphyllis Press, to actually do arrangements in this way where I acquire work and we work together. Because if you think about it, like, I've got to like you and I want you to like me, because we're going to be talking a lot and we're going to be strategizing together and we're going to be celebrating wins and questioning non-wins and all these sorts of things. And I think she's remarkable, and her husband as well. Like, to work with the two of them, her husband did an incredible job designing this cover and laying out the interior of this. And I mean, this cover is one of my favorite covers ever. And it's 100% him. So for us to all be able to come together and speak to each other, like, in truth, with respect, with humor, with fun, with the same end goal, has been one of I won't say funnest, because that's technically not a word, but it's one of the most fun projects I never imagined in a million years I would be involved with. So for me, it's just proof that, like, if you just keep doing the thing that you love, the right people and opportunities will attract themselves. You will attract them. And we talk about that all the time, but like, I'm a practical person and a pragmatic person too. I'm not cynical, but I'm absolutely skeptical. Mm-hmm. If you had told me 2 years ago, you're going to meet this woman who's written this masterpiece and she's brilliant and she's beautiful and inside and out and she's delightful and, your father will have known her, I would have been like, no, that doesn't, like Cory said, you could not write this if you wrote this as a script for a movie, someone could legitimately say that is ridiculous, like, too ridiculous. But yet here we are.
Yeah. And you are a dream to work with. I absolutely adored all our interactions, and you like swearing as much as I do. So
yes. We like all the same swear word. I mean, it's really just
PG so far today.
We've kept it tame. We can do it when we have to. But I mean, her success to me is whatever she defines that to be. I want to do whatever I can, which is not everything, right? But I want to be the best partner I can in the lane that I'm in and the best friend that I can be in the lane that I'm in to help her achieve that. It's not for me to say, oh, Cory, your book should be a movie, or you should sell this, or you should go here or should go there.
Starring Kate Winslet and Colin Firth. It should be that.
And also Shamar Moore. We don't know where Shamar fits in yet, but like he's on a bench and I have a role. I'm sitting on the bench with Shamar. I don't have to speak. It's fine. Unless I can drop an F-bomb, then great. But, I have all kinds of visions. But it's just, I can't put it into words, which says all that it needs to say, because I love words and I can talk all day. And I just don't have the words for how, I just don't have them.
Let's say that funnest is now a word. I think we just declare that.
Yeah.
It was funnest.
Why not? I mean, if you go back through the litany of how words came to be, I don't know who decided that, biggest could be a word, but funnest can't.
Right. Yeah, doesn't make sense. So from this point forward, funnest is acceptable.
Is acceptable.
We write our own rules.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I think this would be a great time to let the listeners know how they can get a copy of Folksong and also your album.
Absolutely. So my website is corygoodrich.com, Cory Goodrich, Goodrich, like the tires.com. And everything's up on there. You can also go to folksongbook.com. And that's the site just for the book itself. But you can see my paintings, you can hear music, you can hear everything on my personal website. So
I'm excited to put together the blog post to talk about your podcast today, because I'm going to get to include art, paintings drawn by Cory Goodrich, and link out to your music. So thank you so much for coming on to talk about your book. And I wish you the very best for what the rest of the year has to hold. Let's hope this one's different from last.
Please. And thank you for starting this. I think that there is room on the playground for all the voices of the NPEs and adoptees. And I think what you're doing is so very important. So thank you for giving voice to that.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of DNA Clarity and Support podcast. Head on over to watersheddDNA.com to learn more about the resources and support available for those involved in DNA discoveries.